shaping the future of sustainable plastics. And for that, to set the scene, I'd like to invite our hosts. I'd like to ask Yvonne Van der Laan, who is the Executive Vice President, Circular and Low Carbon Solutions. So that tongue twister is in her title. Come on up, Yvonne, give her a hand. And many of you will remember and know Jim Guilfoyle. He's Executive Vice President of Supply Chains and Advanced Polymer Solutions. And I think there's also, that's the old title. You know what? I just noticed it when I said it because we're going to get there he is. Since that title, Jim has, of course, moved to Rotterdam, where he's successfully, I think now, Senior Vice President, Olefins Polyolefins, EMEAI at LYB.
We love acronyms.
It works, huh? Works for us. Good.
Absolutely.
So let's start. Welcome to both of you. And isn't this fantastic to see such a packed room after all the preparation?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's really exciting.
Very satisfying. Yvonne, Executive Vice President of CLCS. Tell us about your role at LYB and how you're actually contributing to the company's leadership in sustainability.
So in my role as Executive Vice President for CLCS, it's my job together with my team to make sure that we create the environment and the business cases for the investments needed for circular and low carbon solutions in polymers. It is really business driven. So it really requires us to set the conditions together with our partners, and we talk about it more today and tomorrow, because it's something we can't do on our own. So we're going to talk about this, on how we need that, and that's also why I'm very pleased that we have also external stakeholders here that need to help us to create those conditions along the value chain to be able to do so.
A lot of customers in the room. Yeah, that's fantastic. So Jim, we just heard the LYB tagline, the solutions for a better tomorrow, in the opening video there. And that plays, of course, off your purpose of creating solutions for everyday sustainable living. So tell us about your role and how LyondellBasell is actually doing that.
Yeah, so just briefly again, my role is the Olefins and Polymers business in Europe, Middle East, Africa, and India. So that's my relationship to Yvonne, is our close integration with the strategy we have on the circular front. So as I think about how LyondellBasell is pursuing this, it really is around our three main pillars of strategy: growing and upgrading the core, building a profitable circular and low carbon solutions business, as well as looking at our performance culture. Those are kind of the three main pillars that we've established now as a company. Going back to growing and upgrading the core, for us, it's really about finding low cost positions in the industry, remaining extremely competitive. Some of the things many of you have heard in Europe, we are undergoing right now a European assessment looking at the health of our assets. The other thing we are also looking is expansions in the Middle East, where they do have long-term sustainable cost advantages. So that's all in the purview of what I'm doing with respect to growing and upgrading the core. Now, as Yvonne and I work together, we're very integrated. Many of you will see the technology this week, but we're very integrated with our Vesseling hub. We are still running the big assets for our company and for you, the customer, but we are looking to heavily integrate the sources of pyrolysis oil from Yvonne's organization and through MoReTec to put into our furnaces to create that circular economy. And then lastly, we have launched this value enhancement program, which many of you may have heard, or if you listen to our earnings call. It's really a way of process thinking, a way of looking for value in the company, very organized in the way we approach it, places a lot of accountability in our organization, and has delivered significant value for the company as well. So that's how we're kind of approaching things these days.
Thanks for that. And Yvonne, we're seeing increased demand for sustainable solutions across the industry, across multiple industries, obviously. So how exactly is LYB strategically addressing that demand? Specifically, what initiatives are you actually implementing to develop that CLCS that's going to help your customers meet their targets?
Great question. So it starts, first of all, with the demand. And we have many brand owners in the room, and they obviously watch carefully also what consumers are wanting, so they're following the trends. That's one. Two, most of these brand owners have made ambitious public pledges on recycled content, and then on top of that, greenhouse gas reduction for their consumer solutions, whether it's packaging or consumer durables. And that's great, but what is really needed, and we'll talk more about it, is that it also needs to be supported by the right policies, by the right regulatory frameworks to sustain the demand and really create skill for that, but also create an environment where companies like ourselves can invest in those new technologies that are needed, create the partnerships of investment needed for the infrastructure. So in Europe, and I know David Carroll is in the room, Plastics Europe, he's going to talk more about it. Earlier this year, the plastic and plastic waste regulation got published. That's really important for us, because for us as a company, it gives us the assurance that at least in Europe, there is, if you like, a floor in post-consumer recycled demand of roughly, by the legislation out there right now, by 2030, 4 to 5 million tons, and is growing towards 2040. So it gives us a perspective that that demand, if you like, by regulatory recycled content minimum requirements is going to be there. And that's important, because otherwise it's very different to convince our board and our shareholders to make, as they see, pretty risky investments, because that's not a proven business model yet. That's one. Two, that legislation is linked to this single-use packaging directive, and I know David will address this as well.
Yeah.
And that makes the translation, and it should land this year, for also chemical recycling to be part of that. Because if you want to meet that demand, and you also want to make sure for food and context-sensitive applications, we can fulfill that, is regulated also with the rules that need to be further translated into the mass balancing rules about the chain of custody and how this recycled content can be accounted for. So I'm very pleased as well that we have Jan Henke here of ICC Plus, and he will talk about this more tomorrow. So that is setting the boundary conditions for us to give that perspective to make these investments. And how do we do that? By creating what we call our integrated ecosystem. And that starts with what Jim already mentioned. It starts with our what we call our central integrated ecosystem hubs in Cologne, the Wesseling area, with the crackers and the polymer plants around it, as well as in Houston, where we have also the crackers, the polymer plants. So what have these two ecosystems in common? They are both in heavily dense populated areas. What does that tell us? That in principle, the plastic waste from the consumers is there. And that's what we need to build the model on right now, is how can we get access to the plastic waste, create the partnerships with this ecosystem to make sure that the plastic waste from the consumers can be turned again into feedstock for chemical recycling, like MoReTec. But we also look at how to work with those partnerships to see how we optimize those streams. So, for example, for high-quality mechanical recycling solutions, we really need to get access to what we call the rigid monobales for the right solutions in HDB, PP. We acquired last year a new cycle solution-based technology in Germany. So we are looking to create the synergies between the feedstocks needed for chemical recycling and solution-based, so we can really build skill, efficiencies ourselves with the investments we are making in these new recycling technologies, as well as with our partners. And this way we hope to create an ecosystem that can create that optionality, bring the full solution space to our customers, the converters who turn it into the packaging solutions, for example, for the consumer brand owners that have these ambitious goals and need to also adhere by the legislation in Europe. So what is very much at the heart of that is our MoReTec technology, because we're really looking to integrate this with our crackers in Wesseling and Houston. And when I mean integrate, is really making sure that out of this new chemical recycling technology, we can use both the liquid and the gas stream as feedstock into the crackers. And with that, make the transition more and more from fossil-based feedstock to, in this case, circular-based, plastic waste-based feedstock or biocircular feedstock. So we're very excited about that, and therefore also very excited about tomorrow. And actually, hopefully, most of you will be able to join to our pilot plant in Ferrara.
Karen, if you don't mind, just
Go
the
ahead.
linkages to that between Yvonne and I. So we obviously have to make the products that those in the audience here and those that have a circular model designed on our assets, things like packaging film and items like this. So we're already going through test runs and putting these products on the right assets in the right location in the Wesseling hub to ensure we have that connectivity between the pie oil and the products. So we need to make sure that we can make these products and we can provide these with that circular certificate that stands the test of any kind of legislation that could come, whether it's country borders or whatever. So that's one of the things that my team does, is it works with our tech service teams, with the customers here in the room, to make sure we have the right portfolio. And that's one of the things, and make sure we can process this pie oil through our furnaces without trouble. So these are all the things with the linkages and the integration between Yvonne's team and our team comes in.
Fantastic, and so such a wide range of solutions available, and in being worked on. But where there's a lot of political upheaval going on. You mentioned obviously the security, the risk taking that is involved in these investments. Especially in the last 100 days, obviously, Jim, as you and Yvonne
Why are you looking
know
at me?
only too well.
He's European.
Exactly. You're the one that's been living in the States. Just tell us how, because obviously it's a question on so many people's minds, how is LYB actually navigating these current market challenges, and particularly the tariffs?
Yeah. Well, the only thing I would say, this is not the first disruption in supply chains we've seen over the years. I mean, even last year, we saw the Red Sea, which was a fairly substantial disruption in the flows into the Mediterranean, right?
Yeah.
So we saw a lot of our Middle East competition having to go around Africa, having to change supply lines, and then we saw the globe start to reshift. LyondellBasell's well positioned. We're a global company. We have assets all over the world. We'll rebalance our trade flows based on where we can create the most value for our shareholders. So we're not overly concerned right now with this.
Okay,
yeah,
thanks very much for that. Yvonne, as we discussed yesterday, we knew we'd be tight for time on this. So anything else you'd like to mention in terms of the strategies that you're implementing that you want to make sure the audience is aware of, that we'll be talking about?
I think one other point to stress is the plastic waste, addressing plastic waste, circular plastics economy is one important aspect, because that's where the most urgent demand is to be addressed, and also, frankly, 2030 is very close. But it's not just circular. So the circular products already have inherently a lower product carbon footprint than the fossil-based alternative. But we know our customers and the brand owners obviously are also looking to address greenhouse gas reduction even further. So I know it's going to be discussed further. So what are we doing also on looking at our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, some of the other technologies that are developing to create routes, low carbon routes to the feedstock we need to make new polymers or chemicals. So I think it's important, and what is truly important around that, and I know we have Andrea Brown in the room, our Chief Sustainability Officer, we need across these value chains, whether it's for the right definition and the way of how to account for in the sustainability declarations, whether it's the biocircular content, the plastic recycled content, or the product carbon footprint, we desperately need standardization across the value chains. And the chain of custody aspect, mass balancing of recycled content, but we need the same for product carbon footprint. So I'm right looking at Lego right now. So this is the discussion we had before we came into this conference.
Just over lunch.
Yes.
Well, we will be discussing and touching on a lot of these issues in the presentations later today, also in the panel discussions tomorrow. So I'm gonna cut this off here so that we can actually get the show on the road. Thank you very much, Yvonne Van der Laan and Jim Guilfoyle.
Yes, thank you.
With the proper title this time. Thank you very much.